Hi, I'm Sandra Crawford Williamson, the COO of Forward. I get asked a lot, why a nonprofit ministry, Sandra? You came from corporate America. And so I wanted to share a little bit of my story today. I grew up in South Louisiana, very scrappy, humble upbringing, worked really hard, very focused on accomplishment so I could get a scholarship and go to college. And I did. And I went to college and the ups and downs of college life, and then got my first job with Procter & Gamble out of undergrad because I went and stalked the recruiters at the placement center. I didn't have an appointment, and I just sort of went in and said, "Hi, I'm Sandra. I don't have a meeting, but I'm out here. Would love to talk to you." And so I got an appointment. One of them took their lunch hour and interviewed me, and I wound up being the only person hired off the campus. And so I started with Procter & Gamble, had a great career there, and Coca-Cola and Nabisco, reached my VP level at marketing and sales at Universal Studios, and was single all that time. I was so driven to accomplish. I was so driven to have the stuff and the labels and the layers that was going to cover who I really was, that sort of insecure person that had come up and, had things happen to me in life that I wanted to hide. And so it was all about accomplishment. And then I got to do an amazing toy company assignment where I was the president general manager of a global toy company. And, we took them into Walmart and Target and Toys R Us for the first time and had an amazing run. And I found myself at 33 on the cover of the Wall Street Journal and having just an amazing sort of, trophy wall, if you will, with all these amazing accolades, and still single, still trying to maintain my faith and my value system, but being constantly torn by the success of the world. And then I was in Manhattan on September 11th, 2001. I was walking into my office building there, and the first plane flew over my head. And we thought, gosh, that's kind of strange. But we walked in and got right in the elevator. And then when we emerged on our floor, it was chaos. And obviously, people told us a plane just hit, one of the towers. And we couldn't believe it. Everybody was scrambling around and getting on the phone and talking to their loved ones. And I called my mom because that's, that was my family. That's who I had, my mom and dad. I was on the phone with my mom. I'll never forget the moment. And she was telling me what she was seeing on TV. And then all of a sudden she started screaming. And she said, another plane hit the other tower. I said, Mom, that can't be right. You're seeing a replay. And she said, no, I see one building on fire and it hit the other tower. And right after that, our phone cut off. The call went dead. So I was faced with a situation of having a whole team of people there. And you really find out in that moment of chaos what people are made of. And so, some people ran and literally took off and hid, and some people just sort of hunkered down. And there was a group of us that we were determined to go and help. And so we went toward the buildings. And of course, we're meeting people that are coming out of the buildings, and they're cut and they're bleeding and they're traumatized and they want to call home. And so we were helping people make calls. And as we were doing that process and going further south, of course, we heard this crazy rumble. And I, in that first moment, thought there was something happening. It was another explosion in the subway tunnel. That's what I thought. And of course, it took us a moment to realize the second tower that had been hit was falling. We couldn't see it because you're down in downtown and all the buildings are up, so we couldn't see it, but we felt it. And then there's this sort of roar, and everybody said, run. And so as we all ran north, we're all sort of becoming, in this crowd of people, and we all got separated, and we're all with strangers. And where there was this very distinct moment for me where we were trying to outrun the concrete cloud. You've all seen it on the news, everybody gray, head to toe. We're trying to outrun it, and of course we couldn't. And so I had this moment where it was very clear to me that, everything I'd worked for up until that moment, in those first 34 years, what was on my business card and how many digits were on my paychecks and how many trophies I had. All of those were blowing in the wind. And here we were, all covered head to toe, every single person. A guy next to me had obviously been a trader, was in an expensive suit. And the guy next to me on this side was wearing his hot dog vendor pouch where he had been putting his money. And in that moment, we were all gray, top to bottom. And it was very clear to me in that moment that that's what we are before the Lord. We are all the same. We all look the same. And that none of the accolades and the layers and the trophies that I had spent all that time and energy, massing and collecting and hoarding, that none of it meant anything. And I had this very hard look at my life, and I felt lonely and empty. And so I had to get all my team members outside of the city, and I got them on different buses and trains and such. And then I had to drive home from Manhattan to Orlando. And I was with a woman on that drive who had a husband and children, and she was talking to them the whole way, and I didn't have anybody to call. I had more business to attend to. And so I knew at that moment in my life that I needed to reprioritize. I knew something wasn't right. And so that was the beginning of what I call a 10-year cycle to recalibrate. Within a year, I was dating what would become my husband through just crazy circumstances that I know that God orchestrated. Continued my climb up the corporate ladder. I did a .com startup right after our wedding. Grew it to 100 million. Got pregnant, had my first baby at 38, easy breezy, totally healthy. Waited a year, got pregnant again. When I was 15 weeks pregnant, I found out on a Friday morning that baby had a cystic hygroma, which is fluid building up on the back of her neck, which meant that she had a heart defect and was likely due to a chromosomal defect, that she could not live outside my body, that once she was born, her heart would fail. And so they send you home from that appointment, and obviously I was devastated and wallowing. And then that evening, about 6 o'clock, my doctor called, and I said, you've got the news. And she said, I did, and I don't know how to tell you this, but can you get your husband on the other line? So we jumped on the other line, and she said, I don't know, how to say this, but we got some test results back, and you have full-blown cervical cancer. So I'm faced with having a pregnancy of a baby that can't live outside my body and having cancer and needing treatment, but I can't because I'm pregnant. And again, in that moment, I was just faced with this feeling of helplessness and loss and devastation. But I felt such peace from the Lord that I was to do nothing, because of course everyone had an opinion on what I should do. The doctors wanted me to end the pregnancy and have cancer treatment, and even my precious husband said, our daughter needs a mom more than we need a baby that can only live a matter of moments. But I did nothing, and I just walked with the Lord, and He's so gracious and so amazing. And within about 5 weeks, He took baby Kathleen home to be with Him, and she knew no pain. I then had to heal and went through the cancer process, and of course they wanted to do drastic surgery that would end my ability to ever carry a child. And I said, well, why don't we start small? Let's build up to that. And so we did one surgical procedure, and amazingly, all the cancer was removed from my body. Now, I say amazingly because no doubt in my mind it was a miracle. I had an amazing small group that had come alongside me and lifted us up in prayer and all sorts of things. And so was healed from cancer, amazingly. God just delivered me. And so then I still wanted, to be a mother to another child. And so trying to get pregnant, and we couldn't. And so then I thought, well, I'll fix this. And I found the best fertility doctor in town. Went through almost 2 years of fertility treatments and had 3 more pregnancy losses. So then I was then told at 42, Mr. and Mrs. Williamson, we don't recommend you spend any more of your emotional or financial resources to conceive your own child. Your advanced maternal age has made that impossible. And I got so mad, and I looked at him and I said, well, you're not God. And he said these words. He said, He's the only one that can help you now. And I knew in that moment that's where I should have been the whole time. I shouldn't have been pumping these drugs in my body and making myself crazy. So I went home and I just got on my face with the Lord, and I changed my entire prayer life. Instead of give me a baby, I prayed for forgiveness, that I had been so greedy and demanding and wanting. And I prayed for peace and contentment with the amazing life and blessings that God had given me. And about 2 months went by, and I was, coming to a place where I was okay. I had had this tremendous loss, but I had a great life. And then I thought I had the flu. And long story short, turns out I was actually pregnant. And so I was again delivered from the Lord this amazing gift of a son at 42 years old, unassisted, and he was perfectly healthy. God continues to have a great sense of humor, because I, at about that point, became the chief marketing officer of a $3 billion global firm with a newborn, and was, working hard and had an amazing family. And then about 15 months later, I thought that I was going into an early change of life cycle, and turns out I was pregnant again at 44. And had this amazing blessing of a third child at 44 years old. And in that moment, realizing that I was pregnant and carrying this baby, I knew, God had given me this 10 years of a rebirth, of reprioritizing and rechanging, and I needed to take that to the next level. And so I had this opportunity to leave the firm through different circumstances, and I orchestrated the exact time I could pick my daughter up from kindergarten. So I loaded my car with all my stuff, and I raced my pregnant belly. I raced to kindergarten, and my car rounded the bend, and I saw her little face light up because it was Mommy's car picking her up. The teacher opened the door, and she looked in the back of my SUV, and she saw all these things from my office, and she looked at me, and she said, "Mommy, did you leave your job to spend more time with me?" And I looked at her and I said, "Yes, I did." And so she got in the car, and that was 4 years ago. And I vowed then to start my own consulting practice, and it was all about the F word, which is flexibility. And I took on the clients I wanted with the timing I wanted, and poured myself into my career and my faith and my family all at the same time. But I still felt really alone and like, gosh, I've got this life, but aren't there other things out there? And so lo and behold, someone introduced me to Diane Pattison, who had written Work, Love, Pray and started Forward. And Diane and I became great friends and developed this great relationship over a few years. And then in the summer of 2013, Diane said, "Sandra, it's time. I'd like you to come and join me at Forward full time and take things to the next level." And so I'm extremely blessed every day to get to do what I love in a flexible schedule and pour, my time, talent, and treasure into a great ministry that I believe in and that's changed my life. I went to my first Forward event, and my whole career I'd eaten lunch alone at my desk and felt mommy guilt and thought I was the only one. And all of a sudden I walk in and hear 30 other women in a room who are exactly like me, who are wired the same way and have the gifts and the Ephesians 2:10 calling to use those gifts outside of the home, in the workplace. And I felt like I'd come home. I cried like a baby and thought, gosh, if I feel this, other women have to have this loneliness and need to have this feeling too. And so we work very, very hard every day to support professional Christian women and their challenge to juggle it all, and faith, relationships, and their careers. And so I'm here today to just share what's behind my story and what brought me to Forward and why it's so profound in my life. And I know you each have a story out there too. So thanks for listening, and I can't wait to meet you.